In today's lesson, we're going to look at how to play the blues in 5 positions up the fretboard. We'll look at the chord shapes, pentatonic scales, and arpeggios we can use as a framework. And I'll demonstrate how to play using this framework in each one of these 5 positions. Then we'll tie it all together so you can learn how to play with total freedom all over the fretboard. My name is Jack Ruch. Welcome to my channel. Let's get into it. So the 5 positions we're going to use today are derived from the cage system. This is a way of moving open chords up the fretboard to find different positions for playing scales and arpeggios. Now there's a million lessons on this topic, so if you're new to this, check out the lesson I did all about the cage system. I'll put the link down in the description. Now we're going to jump right into this. So the backing track we're playing over today is a 12-bar blues in the key of A, and the chords are A7, D7, and E7. So the trick with this is to identify these chords in each one of these 5 positions. Now we're going to start down here in this lower position between the 2nd fret and the 5th fret. This is the area of the fretboard we're going to learn first. So first up we have our A chord, which we can make an A7 by adding the G note in there. Or we can play it up on the top like that. Then we have our D chord, which we can make a D7 by adding the C note in there. And then we have our E chord, which we can play as an E7 by adding the note D in there. So now, going along with these chords, we have the arpeggios to each one of these voicings. Now I'm going to move through these pretty quickly, so feel free to rewind or use the slow down feature in the settings to slow this down if you're new to this stuff. But A7 is in this position played like this. Then D7 in this same position starts here on this D. And then finally E7 starts right here on this E. So now let's look at our pentatonic scales in this position. Since this is a blues, we can use the A major pentatonic scale and the A minor pentatonic scale. The major pentatonic scale in this spot looks like this. And the A minor pentatonic scale in this position looks like this. Now these arpeggio shapes and these scale patterns are the framework we're going to use to solo in this position. And the trick with this is to find a phrase or a lick that you can use as a jumping off point, and then use this framework of these arpeggios and scale patterns to navigate your way through the chords. So an example of that is to start out with something like right, that's a simple lick based out of the A major pentatonic scale, right? I'm in that scale, so. Then from here I could come down the minor pentatonic scale. Right, so combining those two things together. Then I can repeat that phrase. Then as we move to the D chord, I can use the arpeggio shape for that chord. Right, I can use the notes from that arpeggio shape to outline that chord. So playing something simple like that that outlines the changes. Then I can go back to my original lick. And then coming to the E chord, I can play something out of that arpeggio. Then out of the D arpeggio, and then back to our original lick. Right, so it's really that simple, just tying together different phrases from the pentatonic scales and then using those arpeggios to highlight chord tones of the different chords. And limiting yourself to this one position will help you really learn that area of the fretboard. And you can practice these arpeggio shapes, practice these scale patterns as you work on developing vocabulary and ideas in this position. So now I'm going to play a solo to the backing track, and I'm just going to play freely in this one spot just to demonstrate how I would use this stuff in a real world context. So the next position we have is based here around the 5th to 7th fret, this region of the fretboard. And our chords here for A is this bar chord shape right here, which we can make an A7 by dropping the A down to a G. Then we have this bar chord shape, which again we can play as a D7 by adding the C note in there. And then we have again this shape, which we already used once down in this other position. And again, this can be made an E7 by adding the D note in there. So those are our chords. And now the arpeggios, the shapes that fit along with those chords are this shape for A7. This shape for D7, and then this shape for E7. And then again we have our pentatonic scales. Here's the major pentatonic scale. And our minor pentatonic scale. So again, we can use this same method of finding licks. It's often a good idea to use some blues licks that you know or blues licks that you hear off of records as kind of a starting point, something simple. Right, a simple pentatonic blues phrase can be a great jumping off point because it's going to set you up phrasing-wise and lead you into different things. As far as navigating through these changes and using these arpeggios and scales. But you can start to develop these little motifs and themes using this stuff, and then as you're working out ideas, you can use the arpeggio shapes and the scale patterns again as sort of a blueprint for finding new ideas. So here's another pass through the changes here to the backing track, and this time I'm going to stick just in this position. right, so let's move up to our third position of these 5 positions that we have. And just a reminder, all of the tabs and notation for this stuff, plus this backing track, are available over on my Patreon site. The link is down in the description, so be sure to check that out if you like looking at tabs and notation to help you learn. So this next position we have, coming from here, we're going to move up. Again, all these positions sort of move up the fretboard, and they're all sort of connected one from the next, right? So this next position we have for A is this A chord voicing, which we use down here for E. Again, these shapes and these positions repeat themselves up the fretboard. But here's our A chord, which we can play as an A7 like that. Then we have our D chord, which is like this G shape, which we can play as a 7th chord like that, or a 7th chord like that. And then we have our E bar chord shape, which we can play as a E7 chord like that. And now the arpeggios for these voicings. Starting on A, we have then D7, we have and then E7, we have this. And now our pentatonic scales in this position. Again, starting with our major pentatonic scale, we have and then our minor pentatonic scale. So once again, we can use these scales and arpeggios to inform our playing as sort of a blueprint for navigating over these changes. So again, I'm going to play over the backing track, and I'm going to limit myself just to this one position. And I'm going to use all of this stuff, these different tools that we've learned, to navigate through the changes and come up with ideas. So let's continue moving up the fretboard. We're going from this position here around the 7th to 10th fret, and we're going to move up here to, the 10th to 12th fret in this position. And this is our A voicing right here, which we've played a couple times already. Again, we can make this an A7 by adding that G note in there. Then we have our D chord, which is this bar chord shape here. And again, we can make that a dominant 7-note chord by adding the C note in there. And then we have our E7, which we've played a couple times before. This kind of G shape, open G shape, right, moved up here. And we can make that a 7th chord by adding the D note in there. So again, these shapes repeat themselves. We've already played all 3 of these shapes before, so the arpeggios are going to be the same. It's just a matter of moving them around and attaching them to the right chord for the progression, right? We've played these voicings already for different chords. Now we're going to play them for the A chord, the D chord, and the E chord, right, in this spot. Now our D7 in this spot. our E7 arpeggio in this spot. Right, so these are all the chord tones, the notes that make up these chords in this spot. And these are crucial notes to target if you want to really outline the sound of these changes. Just targeting these notes can really give your solos a lot of direction and intention in outlining the changes and playing the right notes that are going to highlight the chord sounds. So now our pentatonic scales in this position. Here's our A major pentatonic scale. And our A minor pentatonic scale. So once again, I'm going to solo over this track, sticking just to this one position and combining together elements of the major pentatonic with the minor pentatonic, and then using those arpeggios, those chord tones, to highlight the sound of the different chords as they change. And this is actually one of my favorite positions to play. It's not as common as some of the other pentatonic positions, but it's a personal favorite of mine. So we've got one more position to go of our 5 positions, and this time we're going to move from this area of the fretboard up here to around the 12th to 15th fret, this region of the fretboard. And so here's our A bar chord in this spot. Then we've got our D chord, which is played like this in this spot, and then we've got our E bar chord, or our E7 chord, right there. And again, the arpeggios that fit to these chords in this spot are this. We've got this A7, this D7, and finally this E7. And once again, our pentatonic scales in this position. Here's our A major pentatonic. Finally, our A minor pentatonic. So once again, I'm going to combine these elements together as a framework for coming up with different ideas to solo with. I'll play to the backing track one more time and limit myself to this one position, and come up with a nice little solo that I can play over the entire length of the chord form just in this one spot. So I can't stress enough how important it is to practice each one of these positions one at a time. The more comfortable you get playing in each one of these positions, the more freedom you have once you start connecting things together to play comfortably wherever your playing takes you, right? You can kind of move up the fretboard, and then when you get to a certain spot, you have a complete picture of what's going on in that position, and you've hopefully developed some vocabulary that you can play there. That's going to eliminate any kind of dead spots or mystery spots on the fretboard for you. But once you get comfortable playing in each one of these positions, then you can start to connect them together. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. I mean, you can even take the same phrase and play it in the different positions. Like I could take a simple major pentatonic thing like, and I can play that on different strings with different fingerings in all of the different positions. So right? So I can take that simple idea and connect it all across the fretboard. I can also take simple phrases and instead of playing them in one position, just simply move part of it down one position or up one position. For instance, I could play something like right, kind of combining major and minor pentatonic, but then I could move the second part of that lick down a position. So right, different things like that. Or I could play or anything I want to do. Really, once you have a good handle on the 5 positions, you have a lot of freedom to move things around and sort of use your ear and use your own sensibility to find things that work for you. So I'm going to play one final solo over the backing track. I'm going to play a few times through, and I'm just going to kind of play freely and improvise using some of the stuff we've talked about, but tying together the different positions and kind of show you how I can flow through them now that I've kind of practiced them to the point where I'm comfortable in each spot. So check it out. So we covered a lot in this lesson, these different positions, scale patterns, and arpeggio shapes and chord voicings. This is all really crucial stuff. One of the things that's nice about playing a blues like this is that it's only 3 chords, and all the chords are the same quality. So we're working with all dominant chords. But this same kind of approach can be applied to any chord progression you're working on. Once you kind of get comfortable with the blues, it's nice to kind of move into progressions where you have major chords and minor chords, or major 7, minor 7, dominant 7 chords, because that's going to change up some of the arpeggios. And then, things where you might use more involved scales, like major scales or minor scales with a few more notes thrown in there. But this is a great practice technique, and starting with the blues is definitely a good way to kind of start getting a handle on this thing. So once again, all the tabs and notation and the backing track for this lesson are up on my Patreon site. So if you want to work through each of these solos individually and kind of learn some of the ideas and vocabulary that I used, that's all available there. And then I encourage you to, learn these scale patterns and arpeggio shapes the best that you can, and then explore coming up with your own solos and your own ideas and your own creativity. So thank you very much for joining me. Check out the Patreon site. All the links are down in the description. And until next time, happy practicing and take care.